Welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. Our focus this week is on the crisis in Burundi. The past week has seen a merry-go-round of activities. A section of the military tried to seize power in a coup, while President Pierre Nkurunziza was supposedly attending a regional summit in Tanzania. Forces loyal to the president stepped in and have returned power to the president. Meanwhile, the protests are back on the streets as those against the president's third-term bid do not want him to run. The president's supporters have been carrying out protests of their own. The fear right now is that the political crisis could escalate into something much worse, another ethnic war. Don't forget, the country, just like Rwanda, is still recovering from the aftermath of the civil war and genocide. Nkurunziza himself was the former leader of a Hutu rebel group known as the Forces for the Defense of Democracy, which was the armed wing of Hutu exile group, the National Council for the Defense of Democracy. We've called back one of our esteemed guests on the program, Ambassador Joe Keshi, who served on missions in Francophone Africa to help us navigate the issues in Burundi. Now, we know there was an attempted coup in Burundi and the government has arrested a few people who may have participated in it. On Saturday, 18 of them, including the country's former defense minister, General Cyril Ndayirukiye, and 2 police commissioners appeared in court in Bujumbura. Following the coup, security has been beefed up around the capital city, with police patrolling the streets looking for more people suspected of participating in the coup. But there is visible fear that the remote causes of the civil war may be lurking in the shadows.
Weeks of unrest have finally led to this, a failed coup, and the suspect arraigned in court. Their fate to be decided following a hearing in court. Family members who are also in court claim the suspects have been maltreated by the police. They say some had raw wounds on their bodies and one of them had lost hearing in one ear. Another, identified as a major general in the army, had no shoes on. Others had no legal representation. It is not clear what the charges against them are, but it's clear President Nkurunziza has a divided army on his hands and must now sift to know who his loyalists are. A curfew remains in place, and police have been manning the streets of the capital, Bujumbura, the scene of protests the last couple of weeks. However, some protesters braved the military order by taking to the streets again. Despite a ban on protests, many have vowed to continue until the president steps down. The president has called for calm. In an address on state radio and television, he said peace had returned to the country following weeks of demonstrations. Meanwhile, more than 100,000 people have fled the country into neighboring Tanzania, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The UN Refugee Agency says 70,187 arrived in Tanzania, 26,300 in Rwanda, and 9,183 in the DRC as at Friday.
Welcome back. So let's understand where the concerns in Burundi are coming from and what role President Nkurunziza has played in this.
Pierre Nkurunziza entered into Burundian politics at a time when the country was engrossed in a political and ethnic crisis. Nkurunziza was an assistant lecturer at the University of Burundi, Bujumbura, at the time. He was nearly killed on campus but escaped and would later join the armed wing of the Hutu exile group, the National Council for the Defense of Democracy. That's the Forces for the Defense of Democracy. He was later sentenced by a Burundian court for his rebel activities. When the CNDD-FDD became the official political party in 2005, it won in the parliamentary election under Nkurunziza's leadership. Later, he was asked to be the party's candidate for the presidential election. Nkurunziza won by 151 to 162 ballots cast and was elected president and sworn in on August the 25th, 2005. But he had the troubling task of stabilizing the country. His main job was to allay fears amongst many Tutsi of Hutu-dominated rule and actively recruited Tutsi members into the party. In September 2005, he brokered a tentative ceasefire with the last Hutu rebel group outside of the peace process in Tanzania in 2006. It was soon forgotten and violence resumed, and no substantive agreement was reached until May 2008, when the National Liberation Forces convened with the president in Bujumbura and signed another ceasefire agreement. The president's tenures have been criticized for its treatment of the media and response to public dissent. Public unrest over his third-term bid shows the president could face a more turbulent term.